The transfer portal is online and it is active and it is wild.
Do you see there's like 400 or something more players that hit the portal on day one versus last year?
No, I
Like
didn't see that.
1100 some odd players entered the portal on day one this year. Last year was like 745 or 750 something.
Jeez.
What's surprising is the amount of young players and starters. Like Kyle McCord, why is he in the portal?
That was weird.
He's a starting quarterback for Ohio State. Even if you're not, more often than not, you're going to suck in the NFL, you're probably going to be a first round pick if you're a good starting quarterback at Ohio State. Apparently, he's leaning towards Nebraska now, but no.
I feel like that's a huge downgrade for him, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. And then, but I think when you look at more of the transfer portal, it's a lot of 6 and 7 year guys that got extra years due to red shirts and COVID, which I think at this point, this is probably going to be the year where you see the most transfer portal because of that. And this transfer portal is a couple years removed from that 2020-2021 class, the 2020 and 2021 classes, or I guess it's the 2021 class that didn't get to be recruited in a traditional way because of COVID. So they had to do all like Zoom and phone calls mainly. So they didn't get those experiences like normal recruits do, where they go on official visits and all that stuff. Or I don't even remember if they did that. They was probably very limited in what they could do because of COVID regulations. So that's probably also a reason why there's so many young players, because they want to get that full. Maybe they chose because online it seemed like a good idea, but they didn't fit in. They gave it a try after a couple of years and they decided it's time to move on.
It is interesting. The Kyle McCord one threw me through a loop just because, yeah, he hasn't lived quite up to the expectations, but he wasn't necessarily horrible. So Ohio State's in the market. But yeah, Dylan Gabriel. We talked about Dylan a little bit. Whether he goes to the portal, comes back for another year. I thought for a second, maybe there is a chance that he comes back, but I think that was before Levy announced that he was going to Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And Brandon, you and I were on the same page that him hitting the portal would make a lot of sense because he's going to be in high demand. As Matt Rule said, a good starting quarterback is $1 million or $2 million or more in the transfer portal right now. He's not projected to be, the number one overall pick to, go cash in $40 million in his first contract. But he very well can go find another program, $1 million, $2 million in NIL next year, have a fantastic season, probably get drafted, a day 2 kind of guy, and then cash in your NFL contract. You just delay the inevitable that you're going to be a day 2 guy, regardless if you go this year or next year, as long as he goes to the right school and the right program. The programs that I've seen, he seems to be wanting to go out to the West Coast, like he originally was going to do when he transferred to UCLA, because, being out in Hawaii, it would make sense he'd want to be on the West Coast. The irony of potentially USC and Oregon, not so much Oregon, but USC, old Lincoln Riley trying to come in and scoop up OU's former quarterback would be hilarious. Part of me thinks that I would have a hard time seeing him go there because he knows,
it's not going to go
the
well.
history.
Yeah, I don't.
At the end of the day, you gotta do the best for him, right? For himself.
Before we move on, this has to be addressed. Our friend Matt Bingham here, coming back. His baby was just born. Congratulations, Matt.
Congrats, Matt. That's awesome.
Nice.
Big day for you and the fam. New member of Sooner Nation.
Wow. Awesome.
But yeah, the transfer portal. Brandon, I think you're about to go.
I was just saying.
I interrupted you there.
We talked about it last week, and you were right. We were talking about Dylan Gabriel to the portal makes a lot of sense. Obviously, I thought, and I think we all agreed, that Mississippi State makes the most sense. I don't know who's going to play quarterback at Mississippi State next year because Will Rogers is done, I believe. It would have been a perfect, he's really good in Jeff Levy's system. He's not a guy who's going to be a first-round pick. Why not go ball out in Jeff Levy's system again? raise your draft stock as much as you can and be a perfect bridge quarterback for Jeff Levy, to get his guy in the future. It made perfect sense. That marriage, I thought, was for sure going to happen if he did hit the portal. It looks like he's going to Oregon, which I guess, yeah, like you're right, Brown. He's from Hawaii. That makes sense. You want him wanting to play West Coast. I think he can do well in Oregon too. I wonder if he grew up being a Marcus Mariota fan. He's from the islands too, and he played at Oregon. I think that might have a little bit of a factor in his decision if he does ultimately choose Oregon. And I wouldn't hate if he picked Oregon. If he picks Oregon, I think we can all still cheer for him. If he goes to USC, I probably won't cheer for him anymore.
I think he's kind of earned the right to pick wherever he goes, but Oregon is probably the better place for him. Like, I know Lincoln Riley does really good stuff with quarterbacks, but when you look at it, at the end of the day, quarterbacks are still judged by how many games your team can win. Going into the season, even Oklahoma fans, to an extent, were like, Dylan Gabriel's not the guy. And maybe he's not a first-round Heisman level quarterback, but he's a damn good player. If he goes to Oregon and wins 10, 11 games, or even helps them get to the playoffs next season, he goes from being a around 3-4 guy if he has a good year to being a late first, maybe even a second round guy just because his team won games and got to the playoffs. Like that's kind of impact. Even though I was the guy from this trio that said I don't think he can really raise the stock, it would have to take going to a team like Oregon that can compete probably in the Big Ten, where there isn't the competition. When you look at it, I mean, Oregon's still a really good team, and I think they can compete in the Big Ten. They're a pretty physical team in the trenches, so he's got a shot. I mean, it's definitely going to be a little bit different style of football. Weather's going to affect him a little bit more. It's going to be interesting how they use him. And him not going to Mississippi State is a little surprising, like you said, Brandon, given that he has a lot of familiarity with Lebby. Maybe he's like, I need to prove that I can excel in another system. And Will Stein was a guy that for a little bit was rumored to be in the running for the OU OC job. It was a very, very small chance that was happening, but he runs a good system. I mean, he revived Bo Nix. And Bo Nix, when he left Auburn, looked like a lost cause. And now he, for 10 out of the 12 weeks of the regular season, looked like he was going to be a Heisman winner.
I mean, with DG, he's a guy that started at Central Florida, didn't have a whole lot of success as a team there. He was great, but the team was never fantastic. Then he came to Oklahoma, went 6-7. He was finally part of a 10-win team here at Oklahoma. I think he's probably going to want to keep that winning train going. If he wants to win, Oregon is the most win-ready team. It makes the most sense.
All right. Shout out Jacob Matthews here. Thanks for the super chat or sticker. I honestly don't remember what they're called. Here's his comment. If we don't get any of the Texas A&M elite defensive line transfers, will our transfer portal haul be a letdown? And since everybody's leaving, can we flip Bussey and McKinley? Who wants to address?
I think the only one
question 1 then question 2.
The only one I'd want out of the Texas A&M D-line transfer, I think, is DJ Hicks now. At first, I was all about everybody. I think LT Overton just hit the portal today. It's a guy that we were in on. I think just give me DJ Hicks.
Technically, Hicks is not in the portal.
He's coming.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be a letdown. I think Oklahoma will put together a better haul than they did last year. I think Oklahoma's going to have an easier time selling defensive players to come play for Oklahoma after putting together a solid product on the field with what they had. And so I think Oklahoma, like Lane just, made a comment that Chris McClellan from Florida would be great. I mean, if we lock down Chris McClellan, that's a big time win right there. I mean, he played as a freshman along the defensive line in the SEC at Florida. You go get some corners, you go get some offensive linemen that can play. I don't believe it would be a letdown. I think Oklahoma's going to make every shot or every chance, take every swing that they can with Dominic McKinley. I think Oklahoma's going to make this interesting. Oklahoma seemed to never kind of stop, at least keeping tabs on him, even when he committed to Texas A&M, because to be honest, I bet this OU staff felt like that there was a chance that this could happen, that A&M, could fire Jimbo. And with that in mind, they probably were like, well, we just better keep tabs just in case. Oklahoma, I think, has a legitimate shot to McKinley. I wouldn't hold my breath. I mean, Texas is going to be tough. LSU will be tough. But Oklahoma seemed to be a second or third place in that initial recruitment. And so I don't know about Bussy or Boosie.
Boosie badass.
I'd love to have him, of course. But I think you're going to see that this transfer portal haul is going to be good. And Oklahoma now has to take a running back.
Do they?
I believe they would. I mean, because
you've still got Devontae Barnes. You've still got Gavin Sawchuk. You got Taylor Tatum coming next year. I'm not too concerned about running backs. Sorry, Hose.
I was going to say, because I think that would be a good discussion. I was just going to say real quick on his question. I personally believe that OU fans, and to an extent probably the three of us including, are probably going to be way too sold on, because we missed out on those guys that picked A&M over Oklahoma, now that they potentially enter the portal or are in the portal. OU, like, if OU doesn't win them, it's a loss. Like, outside of LT Overton, DJ Hicks played a little bit this year. If Dindy decides to enter the portal, he hasn't played a ton at A&M, so you're getting a pretty raw talent still in him. So can you develop him, and is he going to be the guy that we've all expected him to be? Sometimes the stars and the ratings and the fact that it was a miss coming out of high school seems to affect the perception of when they're in the portal. With McKinley and Bussy, I agree with Brum about McKinley, and the Bussy stuff is still kind of interesting because he's been very open about it. I'm just going to give them a shot to kind of sell me on it again. So if he changes his mind, it'll be probably over the next week, and then he'll commit to wherever he goes on signing day. But back to the running back conversation you guys were having.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the running back room, I don't think you need someone necessarily to, come in and be a starter potentially. But I do think that you are looking for an elite running back if you can take him. I just feel like if you have three running backs, it's a little thin if someone gets hurt. Then if someone gets hurt, then you're down to two. And DeMarco Murray runs a, very much a committee, running back by committee room. I just feel like you need four viable guys. And I think
Xavier Robinson's there too. He's going to be a Tommy Walker-esque running back, I think.
Who did you say?
Xavier Robinson.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, I do. I just feel like Oklahoma will take one because they were trying to keep Dalen Smothers. If Dalen Smothers didn't leave, I don't think that they would be even really looking. I think that Smothers leaving opens the door. And looking at who's left and who's announced officially. So you did lose Tolly Walker, Marcus Major, and Dalen Smothers. So you lost three running backs. Naturally, you would think that Oklahoma. I mean, you're adding Robinson, and then you're adding Taylor Tatum, so you're adding two. So you would think you'd add one more there in my mind, but maybe not. DJ Graham, not really shocking. Jason Llewellyn, Savion Byrd, Nate Anderson, and then really we were talking about the offensive line. So you lose Nate Anderson and Savion Byrd, and then you're expected to lose Andrew Rame, Tyler Guyton. And
McCade Matauer's gone too.
McCade's gone.
Walter Rouse.
Yeah, Walter Rouse, Caleb Schaefer. I mean, you've lost, whether it's the transfer portal, the NFL draft, or graduating, you've lost along the offensive line. Let me count real quick. You're losing five? I think 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you're losing six guys officially.
Starters.
Well, they're not all starters, but
Andrew Rame's a starter, Walter Rouse is a starter, McCade Matauer's a starter, so 3 starters.
Well, you're losing 5. Guyton too.
You got Caden Green. I'm counting Caden Green as a starter. Yeah, 4.
Yeah, so you're losing 4 of your 5 starters. I think you're going to see Oklahoma and Coach B become very aggressive. You saw Eddie Pierre-Louis, some crystal balls and things like that, and Coach B going to visit him, and it seems like Oklahoma. Oklahoma might have pressed them a little harder and say, hey, you got an opportunity to come in and compete day one. Oklahoma, I mean, the offensive line has turned into, in my mind, priority number one.
It is.
Oh yeah,
I
100%.
Yeah.
you laid it out the best last week, bro, when we were talking about the transfer portal and what you should go after. Like, and you said it yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of scared yourself into O-line being the number one priority, and you're saying
Yeah.
it again. Like, there's a lot of guys leaving either because of NFL draft or graduation, and you have talent, but behind them, it's a lot of inexperienced talent. So you do have to find some help at least where you're confident enough that if the young guys do show up to camp and they're the best guy, you have someone behind them that if injuries happen, which in football they always do, even though we hope they never did, you have someone to back them up. To me, offensive line and to an extent defensive line are really the place where Oklahoma needs to go get more guys. Anywhere between like 7 to 10 guys on either of in that group alone. To me, the tight end talk seems unnecessary.
It's an area of need.
It's an area of need, but I think we haven't even seen what we have in that room. And I know the coaches know more. They see him in practice every day. But you have a very talented and big tight end coming in with Devon Mitchell. We haven't really seen Caden Helms play, and it's a lot due to injury. Cade McIntyre is there. So you need one guy, maybe for depth. Oh, we still have Blake Smith, right? I don't think he's technically graduated. Brum, you might know better on that one than.
Yeah, I don't think he is, but see, I would argue that tight end is a massive need.
I agree. I'm the biggest Devon Mitchell fan of all time, but at the end of the day, the dude next year is technically a high school senior age-wise. He's going to be 17, or very young 18 playing SEC football. I was actually talking to him with my buddy Alex because I was raging about Devon Mitchell being the guy, and he kind of put it into some perspective for me. He's going to be very young. I don't think he's going to be ready right away. Caden Helms clearly has a little bit of injury bug stuff going on. I mean, I think he could be really good, but you're really not. I'm not very confident at tight end going into next season either, or for the bowl game. Is it going to be Blake Smith starting? No, Stogner's still there.
Sure.
Sorry,
yeah, Stogner's still there for the bowl game. I just think that they're selling that room short, trying to always get more tight ends every year. Like, when are you going to give those young guys a chance?
I think Caden Helms will probably get a chance if he can put it together and stay healthy.
McIntyre, Cade McIntyre, got a couple snaps early on in the year, and he looked decent. I mean, maybe he's not big enough to block yet, but that's why you have Blake Smith there. If he's still on the roster, you go in and, you put him as your inline blocker and have one of the younger guys be the pass catcher until they bulk up enough. That's just my thoughts. I know they're probably going to end up taking one tight end, and it makes sense because you do need some depth there. You only have four guys in that room next year since Llewellyn left, and Stogner will be gone due to graduation. So it makes sense. The places of need definitely are just the trenches, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so, I mean, let's just talk a couple names here. I mean, a former Oklahoma Sooner and Jalen Conyers is an opportunity, a potential target, and then Mark Redmond from San Diego State. It seems like Oklahoma have kind of found a couple guys that they like, and obviously they've got some sort of connection back to Jalen. I think you're going to see Luttrell really go after one and do this. But
I like Jalen Conyers a lot.
Yeah, he's extremely talented with the ball in his hands. He just is totally different. He doesn't really block a whole lot.
Who needs that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You need a blocking tight end more so than you need pass catchers. Like, Caden Helms came in being more so a wide receiver type tight end. He has tight end size, but played receiver in high school. Devon Mitchell's a good pass catcher. Cade McIntyre was a pass catcher in high school. So you have pass catchers. You just don't have the big body to block in the run game.
Yeah. I think we got to pause for a second. We're at 281 people right now. 281. So I know that at least there's a couple of you that are not subscribed. I'm going to plug it again. We're 23 away from 6,100. Help us out. Just going to throw that in there. I feel like a lot of people probably want to talk a little defensive line. Potential targets.
Maybe Chris McClellan. He went down to Florida year one, like you said, Rum. He played. He was, maybe not a whole lot, but he was a guy that was relevant in their rotation. Maybe he went down there, hated Gainesville, which who can blame him? And then maybe he's missing home. He isn't a Wasso product.
If Oklahoma went and got Chris McClellan, you remember talking about him. Was it 2 years ago?
Early on in the show's life, we talked about him and Gentry. I mean, this portal. That's why I'm saying this portal season is basically we're just reviving year one of our show and reiterating what we said about all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously with Chris McClellan, he was being recruited by the previous staff, and it seemed like he just didn't jive at the time with the previous staff, and you would think that with Todd Bates, that he's going to be able to right the ship here. I would think he's looking to move closer to home. I mean, also probably to go look for a better program than Florida. I mean, Florida's been an absolute train wreck. And yeah, Lane, you're probably right. He probably didn't want to play for Grinch because I don't blame him either for not wanting to play for him. But
he knew before we all knew.
He did. He called him out, and he went to be a Gator. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, they're a train wreck, the same. But if Oklahoma can prioritize someone number one on the defensive line that is currently in the portal, in my mind, Chris McClellan is number one. And I know everyone's talking about DJ Hicks, but at the end of the day, DJ Hicks is not in the portal.
It's coming.
One can hope, but I mean, I would think Oklahoma has a very legitimate shot of landing Chris McClellan. I think you're going to see him take a visit to Oklahoma. I think he's going to end up a Sooner.
I'd be very okay with that.
Maybe I'm being biased, but I just think he's going to come home. Him and Gentry, I know they're friends. He's got that connection.
Every visit together.
Yeah.
Back when they were getting recruited.
Yeah. I mean, and then LT Overton.
Legacy.
Yeah.
That's one that intrigues me because he was crystal ball. I looked back at his history and was kind of trying to remember how we talked about him. Mm-hmm. It was between A&M and Oklahoma down the stretch. And I think what kind of boned Oklahoma there is, I mean, A&M obviously dropped a huge bag, but was
he committed at once? I thought he was committed.
He was not committed, but he reclassified. He was originally a 2023 kid, and I think that's what put Oklahoma behind the ball there because we had brought in that new staff, and it was getting to.
That was Brownlow Dindy. I'm thinking of Brownlow Dindy. Yeah, he was
Dindy
committed.
was committed. Yeah.
So did LT? He had an older brother.
Yeah.
Didn't he?
He was a defensive lineman out of Liberty. Can't remember his name, but he was there.
He was transferred in. Basically, they were a package deal. Did he by chance graduate?
Mm-mm. He's transferring as well. It's just like when he was getting recruited at high school. If you take LT, you take the older one.
We really are running it back. Like he said, we're running it back.
I'm having flashbacks right now.
Just pull our old videos and post those.
I mean, if you guys want to watch our videos from 3 years ago, I can't guarantee they're good quality. They're fun to watch, but they're there. We were talking about these same guys.
All we got to do is pull them up and drop them tomorrow. It's the same thing, yeah.
It really is. It's just OU and A&M. Just we need to recycle that. No, but he hasn't done a whole lot at A&M, and he's been there for 2 years. But I do think that reclassifying along the defensive line in the SEC play puts you a little bit behind the 8 ball there. So I can't hold that against him. I mean, he was in the rotation being at A&M, but part of me also thinks that, at the end of the day, if he didn't produce for a couple of years, is he still a 5-star? At the end of the day, these these rankings and these stars and stuff are not always accurate. I mean, you get some kids that are 3 stars that we're not excited about, like, not winning the off season, and they come in and compete and contribute year one. I mean, but then you get 5 stars like Peyton Bowen that are immediate impact players, and they are every bit as good as as advertised.
Yeah, he's as advertised for sure.
I mean, 100%. I mean, that he is something that Oklahoma needed badly, and he proved it. And I think you'll just see him skyrocket into a first-round pick. But I think to some degree, Oklahoma and Oklahoma fans have to come to some sort of realization that there are a lot of former 5-stars out there. I'm not saying he's not good, but I'm just saying, at the end of the day, there might be a better transfer out there that can contribute.
We got to pause. We got to 300. I don't know if this is the first time we got to 300, but it's definitely been the first time in a while.
We went over 300 when we had Travis and JP and Parker Thune on once on a live stream. That one was like 500, but I think this might be the first 300 with just us 3 idiots.
100%.
Shout out y'all.
Oh yeah, like and subscribe, people. With the thing you're talking about, Overton, I think what ended up happening there is basically what we all suspected, and we talked about it in our text messages. I read a story, I think it was a week ago. Jimbo Fisher that cycle was just obsessed with getting the best rated players, regardless of position. And most of the top 20, top 40 were defensive linemen. And he got almost all of them. And it was just an extremely crowded room. How are you going to get to play every single 5-star defensive lineman that you got in one cycle when you only have 3 to 4 spots, depending on the snap that you're playing or the team that you're playing, in the scheme? There's a lot of reasons why these guys didn't get snaps. Now, I don't think you're wrong. Some of them probably a lot more raw than others. Walter Nolan is definitely the guy that is probably the prize recruit of that class. Don't think about it. OU probably doesn't have a chance at that one. But when you look at the other guys, let's just say in a perfect world for Oklahoma, all of those guys that were in that 2022 class entered the portal. I think Dindy is probably the one that you think you have the best shot at because he was committed to Oklahoma, and the only reason he left is because of Lincoln leaving. This defensive line staff probably can sell him a lot better, and he's already familiar with Norman. LT Overton. If anyone's going to win him, I bet it's Oregon, not Georgia. I know he's from Georgia, but Oregon was right there in the mix when he was coming out of high school. And if NIL is a play at all, or if it's like the number one thing, Oregon can cough up a ton of cash. I know Oregon can, or Georgia can too, but Oregon's got Nike money. And then I guess the last one is not 2022, but if DJ Hicks does happen to enter the portal, that's probably the number 2 guy that you think out of the A&M room that you really have a shot at.
I think he's the guy that they would go after the hardest too. If DJ Hicks, when DJ Hicks hits the portal, I think he's the one that we're going to go after the hardest.
Yeah.
Well, in that picture of Todd Bates hanging out with DJ's dad, I know he's
playing chess.
Do what?
He's playing chess.
Yeah, I mean, I know he stopped by to go check in on Petaway. Was it Dijon Petaway? I think that's how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
DB commit, yeah, or DB,
yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, you would think that. I mean, obviously, you're going to go see Petaway because Petaway is good in his own right, but
you can do 2 birds, 1 stone there.
It's not your sole reason for going, though.
Definitely not. Definitely not. What about Toriano Pride? I might be messing his first name up because that one, he's the number one. I think he's the number 1 corner in the portal. He's a guy that was at Clemson. Pretty sure Brent Venables maybe helped recruit him back in the day. That would be awesome. And that's another area of need, I think, is corner, because we saw the second corner be kind of shaky whenever Gentry couldn't play. I think Kenai Walker was hit and miss at best. He also entered the portal with a no contact clause or whatever. I don't know if that's the right word, but Hayes Foss, I've never seen that in my life. Does that mean that he doesn't want schools contacting him? He's going to be the one reaching out to schools? I've never seen that.
Well, So another another player that did it was Riley Leonard, the Duke quarterback, came in with a no contact tag on his portal entry. So in my mind, your mind's already made up where you're going, right?
It feels that way, yeah.
Or at least know which couple schools are, in the mix there.
Yeah, and maybe it is. Maybe he just initiates. I don't know how that works, but I think you go into the portal. If you go with a no contact, you're just like, these are my. I've talked to, not supposed to, but there's some reason why that you have an offer to go play at another school and what their NIL package would be, and you're gone, and you don't deal with all that. I mean, we were just talking about. Wasn't there a ton of people that are coaches and stuff that follows follow Chris McClellan or some of these recruits that hit the portal? I mean, it would be probably pretty darn overwhelming as soon as you hit the portal. Your phone would explode. If you're a good player, it would explode. Like Chris McClellan, I am sure he's getting called by everyone.
Well, let's be honest. We've gotten a few years in the portal now, 2 years into NIL. We know how this works. Those players have either an old coach or an agent or a parent or an aunt or an uncle that's getting contacted by other schools, and then that person is in the player's ear saying, hey, so-and-so school is willing to put you in a better position to play or pay you more money or whatever it is that the other schools offer. And I'm not gonna say every school does it, but
every school does it.
Yeah, more than likely. If there's a no contact tag, then he knows what couple schools he wants to go to. And I'm seeing a lot here in the comment section or chat here that Pride is going to Missouri. I think if he goes to Missouri, I don't remember the guy's name, but what did stand out to me, if you guys saw his 247 interview, I think it was yesterday, he had an enormous man sitting next to him. It looks like he ate an offensive lineman. I think if he goes to Missouri, it's because he really influenced the decision. I think it might have been a high school coach or maybe some guy that is very connected in the high school ranks in the state of Missouri. In that interview, he said, I always tell my kid, the guys that I work with, look at Missouri first and then go outside of Missouri. But he said, if you're from Oklahoma, go to Oklahoma. Or he didn't mention Oklahoma. But he basically said, if you're from that state, look at the schools in that state before you leave. So I genuinely believe if Missouri is the pick for him, it's because he was highly influenced by him. If he doesn't go to Missouri, he basically said it in the interview. His family and him are very close to Brent Venables. And Brent recruited him to Clemson. He's one of those guys that Brent didn't touch whenever he left Clemson to go to OU as the head coach. You would think Oklahoma's probably, maybe not the front runner, but if you want to put them at number 2, it's more so like they're 1B, not number 2. And I would even say you can argue they're OU's 1A for Pride because of how much he talked about Brent Venables and the relationship he had with him, and his mom has with Brent Venables. We'll see how it goes, but I just think that him going to Missouri is more so on the offensive lineman that ate the offensive lineman and not him.
Those relationships mean a lot, though. They definitely don't suck.
Well, and I will say, if you go into with that no contact tag, it would make a lot of sense that he's from St. Louis. Columbia is not too terribly far away. He's going back home, and let's face it, I was wrong. We were all wrong. I thought Missouri was not going to have a great season, and maybe that was a little biased. That I was hoping that they would be a train wreck, and
Neri changed his mind.
When Neri comes back around and becomes available, but they're in a New Year's Six Bowl. Oklahoma isn't. They played well. So Missouri's got a lot of momentum, and they seem to be willing to pay the NIL deals for their in-state products. I know he's coming back from Clemson, but things have changed from the time he went to Clemson to now. Missouri is definitely a lot different as far as a program goes. So it would make a lot of sense. It seems like it's Missouri. OU's probably number 2. If it doesn't work out at Missouri, in this transfer, maybe Oklahoma can come in, but it would make a lot of sense that he's going back home.
Unfortunately for us.
Yeah. Someone asked, what are the percentages or what are the chances of Hicks coming to OU? I'm going to say 0%. He's not in the portal.
That's such a lame answer.
I mean, he has hit the portal to have a chance.
I understand that, but you're factoring that into the question.
If I were to put a percentage on it right now with him not in the portal, I'd say 10%.
That's where I was going.
I wouldn't expect him to be on the roster next year. I just, don't get I wouldn't get my hopes up. If he hits the portal, I would feel a little bit better, but part of me thinks that, with a few guys transferring out, he might see himself having more of an opportunity to play consistently, and Walter Nolan being gone and whatnot. That could help maybe keep him in at A&M.
And if we remember, thinking back to a year ago, outside of what we all suspect was NIL and influence from his parents, the one of the biggest things that was important to him was staying close to his younger brother, or one of his younger siblings, because he wanted to make sure he was able to be close to them for sports and growing up over the next few years while he's in college. I mean, obviously, as Sooner fans, we think going to Norman really isn't that big of a deal. Drive. I'm sure Oklahoma will more than happily make sure you're able to fly down when, in the off season or during your bye week, so you can go visit family and see your younger siblings. But if that is one of the things that is still super important to him, you're gonna have a hard time telling him, hey, it's not that important.
Yeah, and we talked about Pride a little bit, probably going to Missouri. Another guy is Dejon Malone from San Diego State. I don't know if you guys saw, but Oklahoma did offer him today, the corner out of San Diego State. So 6'2", 200 pounds, originally from Fresno, California. He's a junior. I think the defensive back room, and Brandon, you touched on a little earlier, is an important spot for Oklahoma to look at. I think maybe as in our live stream we talked about it a little bit more, but yeah, you're going to lose Woody Washington. Gentry Williams, when he's on the field, is great, but unfortunately the injury bug has been an issue for him. And Kenai Walker has been the depth's been, it's young, and then at times it's suspect. And so you bring in a guy that is a starter and plays consistently, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, 6'2" alone, I'm like, okay, that's a guy that could probably go play in the SEC.
I'm about to say, I mean, you're going to need those guys playing in the SEC. It seems like every receiver's 6'2" and up for the good teams. You can beat Vanderbilt with whoever, but
you can beat Vanderbilt no matter what. But
we're not going to the SEC to beat Vanderbilt.
No, that's a bare minimum right there. But I think you're going to see Oklahoma push him. Obviously, they would like to get Pride, but it seems like Pride is probably going elsewhere. But I mean, it's not official yet, of course. I would think Oklahoma would take at least one corner, maybe at second corner, but at least one in this.
I agree.
Transfer portal. But really, talking about the offensive line, Oklahoma, I mean, we talked about it a little earlier. Oklahoma is losing a lot, whether it's transfer, graduation, NFL, draft. Oklahoma offered the kid from Michigan State, Spencer Brown, offensive lineman. He's talented. I can't exactly remember all of the offers that they've given along the offensive line, but I bet you'll see Oklahoma take probably 2 or 3 offensive linemen in this transfer portal. I think Oklahoma's going to take more transfers than they originally intended to, just because of what's happened in the portal to them a little bit along the offensive line and the running back room a touch. I bet Oklahoma takes 7 to 10 players, but that offensive line, I need to get an entire list, but I did see that they offered the Michigan State offensive lineman.